What's up, guys? This is Gus.
And JC.
This is the Financial Dad Podcast. Started this podcast as more of a family financial dad to his kids, like little tidbits of information that a dad can give his kids in regards to finances and focus and discipline and the things that really help a family do well in life without the consequences of not doing well in life because you didn't do these things. And we talk about that a lot in our house.
Quite a bit.
Yes. We talk about money. We talk about something as simple as buying a new car, something as simple as homes and interest and life insurance. We have a lot of conversations about relationships. And I think the difference between me and probably that my daughter would probably say is I'm brutally honest, like brutally honest.
Very much so.
And so I'm gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it. I've been using this terminology since they were old enough to.
I know exactly what you're about to say.
Well, there are no accidents. And I always tell them, because I do have 4 daughters and 1 son, so I think it's very important for a dad to be brutally honest with a daughter and a son. And so I've always told my older daughters that no girl has ever accidentally fell on a dick, ever. It's always been intentional. So is that a good one? But that's a little brutal, but it's the truth. And but the main reason, there's a lot of reasons, is I am in the financial and insurance field. And what I find is that, and I've probably sat at, just like this, I've probably sat at a table like this, because I started my career with face-to-face in people's homes. And what I find is that, I'm not going to put a percentage, I was thinking about that today, is that there are no percentages. All percentages are made up. I would simply say that the majority of the people that I ever met with had the same concerns, the same wants, the same desires, and most parents want their children to have a quality life. But the reason why most parents can't talk to their kids about a quality life is because nobody taught them. And so the cycle of that just continues on, and that's where I just felt it on my heart that it was important to be truthful with my clients, my family, my children. And so that's how I live my life. And it will reduce your circle. Once you start being truthful with people, it reduces, my clients appreciate it. My kids have hated me. But I use the word facts a lot. But we do try to have fun with it. And I do believe that as my daughter has gotten older, that she has learned that not everything that dad says is done. So
definitely. It can help a lot.
And so whenever I was thinking about doing this podcast, I thought that it was important to show how my views as a dad, how they are heard from a 19-year-old. So JC is 19. She's a freshman in college, and so she hears things differently than how I say them. She hears them from a 19-year-old. And so there's a gap there between 19 and 48 where all in between, I believe that people can benefit from something that we have to say. And so I wanted her to be on this podcast because it means something to me. And I use that a lot with my clients as well as my employees. And my family. It means something to me to make sure that I say what I have to say, and that everybody knows that everything that I say is intentional and it comes from a good place. So, what do you think?
Well, there's also a lot of people my age who don't hear this, just like the way that you grew up and decided to change that. So I can help people understand it from my view and how I understand what you're telling me, and help them gain the knowledge so that they can start now and not 10 years down the road.
Sure.
trying to understand finances and how to buy a home, because we don't learn that in school. It's not taught to us anywhere else.
Well, and I agree, and I will say, so I grew up in pretty much a conservative, my whole family farmed, and farming comes from a different than most occupations, is that you're only as good as what you do that day. Everything you did yesterday does not matter. The future does not matter. Everything you do that day matters. So that's what I grew up in, and I fought it for a long time. I mean, the practicality of how I grew up is, I'm not going to say it's missing today, because I do think that a lot of people try. I just don't think that they know how. Yeah. And like what you just said about it's not taught, you're not going to learn this in school.
No.
Everything that you hear on this podcast, you are not going to hear.
No one will learn unless they go look for it. And the issue is that there's a lot of people your age who are wanting to teach people this, but they're not. They're making all these lessons that you have to buy and things that you have to do extra and listen to even get to the source of the information.
Well, I would say this. I would say that most people my age don't know. They don't know. I think that they want to know. They're ashamed that they don't know. And so it's kind of hard to teach people, your kids, something that you don't know other than theory, meaning like you heard this.
Yes.
And so you're just going to go and you're going to teach your child theory of, okay, well, you should save money. Well, why should I save money? Why should I not have credit cards? Dad, you have $10,000 in credit card debt. How are you going to tell me not to have credit card debt, or go buy a brand new car, or buy a house, or what is a checkbook? Even though checkbooks are becoming obsolete, or checks are becoming obsolete, I think that there's a lot of things that people should know that they don't know to keep themselves out of trouble.
And that's why we're here.
Yeah,
people have to start somewhere.
Well, they do, and people can start anywhere. There is no age. I went to I call it a hoorah. Well, we both did.
Yeah, in Arizona.
I fully believe that parents should. I think the only reason why parents don't involve their kids in their day-to-day life is either out of shame or guilt, or they're not in the place where they want to be in their life, and they're just waiting until that perfect time happens. There is never a perfect time. No. And I can tell you without a doubt, my favorite memories of my childhood were sitting on a tractor with my dad. And 7 days a week. My dad's a hustler. And 7 days a week, he was working, because that's farm life. But my favorite times were with him now that I look back. And so I believe that parents that don't teach their kids, it's not because they don't want to, it's because they don't know. And admitting that they don't know would be admitting failure. And that's a tough thing for a dad to do. It's very difficult. So I just made up my mind a long time ago that I don't even know why I did this. I just did not want you and your siblings to go through the same struggles that I went through. Even though a lot of my struggles, I learned an extreme amount. So I have to be, as a parent, you have to be super careful about taking all struggles away from kids.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Because then you won't learn anything.
Well, you'll become dependent on somebody else doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's why you
see a lot. And that's not the goal.
No, it's not the goal. I mean, if you take all struggles away from somebody, then they become dependent on the government. Mm-hmm. As a girl, and I can say this, I don't give a shit what anybody says, but I've got 4 daughters, 4, and I don't want them to be dependent on a man. I want them to both bring value to each other. And so that has been my goal, is I can't, something as simple as mowing the grass. I mean, something so simple that you think that most people would know how to do. If you can't do it, then you're dependent on somebody else to do it. And I don't.
It's basically living in slavery at that point.
Well, it's
not slavery, but just living under the shoulder of someone else.
Well, it's servitude.
Yes.
It's forced servitude whenever you now being with somebody and they can bring quality to a relationship and they want to do it. That's different. Everybody brings something good or bad to a relationship. Not all relationships are bad, but and I guess that'll kind of tie. So what I did is on the board, I just wrote a lot of things that, well, mainly 5 things that I believe that a lot of people just don't focus on. And it's because nobody told them to. So number 1 is focus on relationships. So I heard this the other day. I was watching a Brad Lee episode, and he always asked people, what is the number 1 defining thing that brings success to somebody? And I believe it's relationships. I destroyed a lot of relationships up until I've destroyed a marriage. I've destroyed it's a very hard thing to admit, but I almost probably destroyed my current marriage out of ego and pride. I am a 100% believer that what destroys a relationship is a man. I believe that.
Why is that?
I think that a woman gets into a relationship with all the hopes and the dreams that a man will rise to the occasion, that he will become a better man. A man will see a woman as she is at the time, but a woman sees hopes and dreams through a man, and that's okay. I think that that's great. So,
but what if that person just is who they are and will never be what they want them to be in their head?
That takes time. I think that in relationships, so in personal relationships, so there's more to the relationships than just personal relationships. I think that where I've failed in my life in both personal relationships and business relationships is I did not see people for who they were, and people did not see me for who I was.
So you saw them for who you wanted them to be?
Yes. And they saw me for the lie that I portrayed.
Do you want to hit on that a little bit more?
I think that a man can be so hopeful of his future that he's living a lie. And what that means is that a man can go out and buy a car, have a decent place to live, buy some nice clothes, and pretend to be something that he's not. And that's why a woman will date him, because, men are visual. Mm-hmm. And so, but women, a woman won't, that they see that. It's kind of like you hear a lot where women are more material.
Yes.
And so if a guy
nails
dresses
done, hair done.
If a guy dresses nice and he drives a decent car and he speaks well or says all the things that a woman wants to hear, then that's what a woman looks at. And
because they see it as attractive.
Yes. But they don't pay attention to the red flags. And so I will say probably early in my, I don't even know, I don't have a time frame. I don't think I really grew up until I met my wife. So, which was, I think I was grown since I was young, just because of the way I was raised. But I really believe that I did not find a purpose in my life, and I still struggle with purpose. Every day I wake up and I struggle with purpose. Is it worth what I'm doing? Is it worth the sacrifice, the money, the time, the effort? And every day I wake up and hope, and every day I go to sleep tired. And then I wake up and I go again, because I have a purpose, and my purpose is you, and my purpose is stop looking at me. My purpose is I heard this the other day, and I'm not going to be like a lot of people and start quoting, is I think a certain temperament or the way that a man thinks is, my ancestors are looking at me. Mm-hmm. The people
what do you mean
that I
by
love,
that?
my grandmother is watching me, and I owe her to do as best as I can. I owe my grandfather. I owe my grandmother. I owe my dad. I owe...
So you're saying that you owe it to the people who raised you to do the best that you can in life.
There's a lot of people who made a ton of sacrifices just to get me to this place, even if they're not alive. And I owe it to them. I owe it to you. I owe it. You did not ask to be here. And so you and your sisters and your brother, I owe it to you to push it every single day. And so...
and what would you say for other people to start finding their motivation and their reason and their want to do more?
Well, I can't speak really for... I don't ever try to speak for... I am lucky enough to be married to a woman that gives her all every day. But we're different. Mm-hmm. And so... And she taught me, I think, relationships. So, and then ask that question in just a second. I think who a person decides, I think it's all fun and games until you decide to establish a long-term relationship. I think that the more quality and the more, there's no vetting in relationships, which can be boring. It's not fun. Okay, so in the financial world, if you're of age, so let's say, 23, 24, mm-hmm. and you start dating a guy and he goes against everything that you and I have talked about, and you were not of this mentality that you are, you're way elevated in regards to your expectations of somebody, but you're still 19. Mm-hmm. But let's say that you were 24, 25, graduated from college, and you're in your career. Okay. And you have expectations of yourself. So are the expectations that you have of your person that you decide to date?
I believe that the expectations that you have for yourself, you should also have for the person that you're wanting to be with.
That's where people make mistakes.
Because then you won't uphold your expectations for yourself, and they'll just start to go lower and lower and lower.
And men lie.
Yes.
Men portray where they think that they are going to be, not where they are, which is fine. I mean, play the part.
So if someone who's listening knows that they're lying, and what would you say for them to correct that and to start doing better to get to the point where they're not living a lie, they're actually living where they want to be?
Well, so I'm part of a men's group that had, I could be on a Zoom with 200 guys, and this is one thing that I've learned. There were guys all over the country on these Zooms. It's called Superhuman Fathers with Kyle Carnahan, and so I'll give him a little shout out. But the one thing that I learned is that most men's fears and their failures are all the same. It's not a money thing. I would say that the number one thing, and you'll hear this across the board with most self-help people who are basically trying to focus in on men or dads. Mm-hmm. I don't have a lot in common with people that aren't dads anymore. I used to try to, but I don't. So if you're not a dad or a parent, it's very difficult for us to be on the same wavelength. That's
like me trying to understand you as a father. I can only understand 19 and below.
Well, you understand theory or what you think I should do.
Yes.
And so, but I would say that, and this is only coming from, you can only speak at 19-year-old. You can't speak for a married woman of 3.
Exactly.
But you can speak for you, so I can speak for dads. The number one thing is that men do not keep themselves as the most important thing. You have to learn that. That's a skill where you have to.
Well, women too.
Well, yeah. Oh, you have to be the number one person in your life. That is the number one thing that I ask in my interviews for employees. Who is the number one person in your life? Mm-hmm. And people are so scared. maybe it's the fear of judgment. They are so scared to say that they are the number one person in their life. And I think that happens because they forgot that you are of zero good if you don't put yourself first. Zero.
And for someone who feels like they're not the number one person in their life or doesn't view it that way, what advice would you give for them to get to that point? Well,
that's the number 2. So I'll go back. So focus on relationships, and number 2 on the limits. You know, sometimes things happen and obligations and responsibilities come into your life. But if you can't look after yourself, how are you going to look after somebody else? So you see it in a lot of dads where they're going as hard as they can. They try. They're trying to manage their family, provide a home, provide food, and so everybody talks about, and it makes me sick, it really does, whenever there's so much focus on, especially in my world, in the financial world, where the focus is on a dollar amount. Well, what they're focusing on is just a word. And so that word, you know, the current one is how to be a millionaire, you can be a millionaire, you can be a billionaire. Well, none of that matters if you can't save $1,000. How you can get to $1 million if you can't save 1,000? And so, but to answer your question, I think that men think that purpose comes from obligations.
Meaning?
What they have to take care of. So they forget to take care of themselves. They forget to educate themselves. And education, I tell people this all the time, and they get bent out of shape. I've got a very good friend of mine that did not go to college. He's been working since he was 18. I ask him all the time. I was like, what did you do to educate yourself? And he'll get bent out of shape. He's thinking I'm talking about college. I was like, dude, did you read a book on how to be a
College does not teach you any of the things that most people should know how to do.
I agree with you, but here is, let me answer your question real quick about what dads can do. I became a different person about 2 to 3 years ago whenever I really took stock of everything that I was not doing. I have not been the best dad.
How did you come to that conclusion that you needed to do more and figure out what you weren't doing?
When you see your daughters going through what you and your sister have gone through, and you see your wife look at you and say, I did not sign up for, she's only told me that 3 times. But
third time's a charm.
Yes. I did not sign up for this. And when your daughters are struggling, and I had a lot of chaos in my life trying to build a business. I had a lot of chaos in my life at the time, and I really believe it was killing me. I really do. I think that running a business and living a lie, I really think that it was the financial part of what I was preaching to people and teaching people I was not living.
So once you started living that for yourself, which I can also say this has worked for me, but once you start living it for yourself is when you actually start to feel the success and you're doing things right.
I think the success for a dad comes through how his children and his wife look at him. I think that a dad should always try to be the hero in his kids' eyes. And even though they may never say it, because, there's so many other people that are heroes in today's world. But as I've gotten older, so I'll use my dad. There's a lot of things that my dad did not teach me, but there is a lot of things.
Such as?
Well, he didn't teach me about finances because nobody taught him. My dad's only, let's say, 19 to 20 years older than me. But my dad has never given up on me, not once, not one single time. But I focus on the things that my dad did not give me. instead of now I look at it and I was like, damn, this dude was in a sophomore in college when I was born. Mm-hmm. Sophomore. He was your age when I was born. And he got his degree, and he could have gone. My dad is a very, very smart man. He could have gone anywhere and done anything. But he went home, and he farmed 7 days a week for 40 years. I did not graduate with college debt. I did not graduate with a car payment. In fact, my first job that I got was because of him. And I know that. It took me a long time to say that. And I think that...
Was that an ego thing?
Probably it was an ego thing, but it took me a while to really realize the strings that he probably pulled for me to get that job. And so the sacrifices that a dad does for his kids, the kids will never see, and the dads don't really talk about it. But that's why, I think that a solid dad is, or a dad that's trying to be solid, is a tough job. And being a mom's a tough job, but I'm not a mom, so I can't
Speak for that.
No, I can't speak for that. All I can do is just basically say that it's in order to raise a child where you can't, a successful child just means that they don't have obstacles in front of them that make their life worse. The success that a person gives themselves is from the things that they do, the value that they bring to the world. And so, but I think that parents can do stuff to make, and I did that to you. I did that to you is I can think of things over the last 19 years that I did that possibly held you back.
But I could definitely say that I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but there's things that happened
I'm saying that for you. I really don't believe that.
See, but I think that there's things that have definitely happened or went on that pushed me to be more disciplined and pushed me to do more things and actually listen to what you're saying rather than just go out and
But when did that happen?
This last year.
It happened because I started doing it.
Exactly.
So that's it.
Yes.
That's the answer. When I started treating myself better and my family better and you better.
Well, yeah, because how can you can't teach a kid to do something if you're not doing it. Why would we listen?
Well, it's a lie.
Yeah.
Even if it's fake, it's a lie, and it will be found out. It will be found out. So I think that when my life...
Truth always comes out.
Well, I think that's a cliche term. I think that the truth is inside of a person, and it will kill them. It will kill a man inside if he's living a lie. The truth may not ever come out, but it will kill him inside if he continues down that path. It will eat away at a man to the point where, because I've always said this, you give a man enough time, he will destroy his life. Absolutely.
Why is that?
Because men have to have a purpose. Dads have to have a reason. And I think that whenever it comes to finances, there's so much, there's everything that you hear in today's world in regards to financial is a lie. It's absolutely a lie.
So shifting your focus is what gets you to this point. Because, for me, I can say as 19, as a college student, there's a lot of people who are just focused on getting invited to this and going to this and wanting to go and do and not focused on what they're learning. Well, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not going to get them to where they want to be.
Well, I think that you have to allow yourself to have fun.
Yeah, I agree with that. But there's a line between having fun and then doing things to make yourself feel bad or screw yourself over because you want to look better in other people's eyes.
Well, I think the one thing that thank God, whenever I was a kid, I grew up around cousins who were totally focused on working out. Mm-hmm. And so did I always live the exact right way? No, I've done things. I will, there's a caveat here I would like to say. There is nobody, once we get to the point where I'm doing like call-ins and stuff like that, there's nothing that anybody can do. I feel like I have lived 5 lifetimes since the time I was probably 15 or 16. Because I've made every mistake. There is not a mistake that somebody has not made or somebody has made that I have not made. I could probably speak a little bit on pretty much every mistake that somebody can say.
Yeah.
And I think that giving a kid permission to have fun and me looking at you and saying, hey, listen, I want you to go have fun. Just be careful with this. Mm-hmm. And if you go out and you decide to do that, even if it's financial, it could be a party that you want to go to. It could be, hey, if you dress this way, this is going to happen. If you get drunk, this is going to happen. Mm-hmm. If you do drugs, this is going to happen. All the way to financial. If you buy this car, this is going to happen. Mm-hmm.
But I think so many people, especially girls my age, because that's really what I can speak for, but I think a lot of girls are so focused on how they look to other people and what they can do rather than figuring out what they want and where they want to go. And that's another reason I wanted to do this podcast with you, is because there's way too many people who don't learn what they want until later down the road, or never learn, especially girls, because they're too focused on everything going on right then rather than what they can do to better themselves.
How about you and I make a promise to each other on this podcast?
Okay.
I will simply say that there is no, and I thought about this a lot, there are no no's. There's only a line.
Yeah.
There's no no's. You want to go to a party? Yes. Mm-hmm. But if you cross that line, then this might happen.
Yeah.
And it's like speeding.
And I think it's going to take people crossing that line and girls crossing that line to realize that they actually have to make a difference in what they want and in their life.
That's right. And the thing about it is, how many times do you have to cross that line is entirely up to you. When do you get fed up enough with that line that you now decide to say no? Mm-hmm. Because but that's with everybody. It's not just with a 19-year-old. That's with everybody. When are you tired enough that you say enough is enough? And
that's for each person to decide on their own.
Well,
or they'll have someone come in their life that pushed them, like you said, like Lindsay.
Yeah. Well, I think a man, and again, I can't speak for women, but a man feels it inside. Mm-hmm. What beats a man down is his responsibilities and obligations. Mm-hmm. And it's always the same story. It is the same story every single time. It's either financial, meaning he obligated himself to a staple expense that he cannot afford. Or he listens to the world and he's stuck on the 40-hour work week. If you think about it, 50, 60 years.
It's called a rat race.
Yeah, it's a rat race. But it's nonsense and it's not real. So what I teach in my office with my employees as well as my kids, there's 168 hours in a week. 168. Mm-hmm. You choose how you spend that 168. So I call it just the 168. Mm-hmm. And so how you choose, and you can break it down, which is boring to a lot of people. People do not want to be told what to do.
And you always tell me you have to do the boring things before you can get to the big things.
That's right. And so like the whole word entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. So people who want to start businesses and stuff like that, it's nonsense. It's nonsense because you cannot be a first-gen entrepreneur.
Why?
Because you'll go broke. That's why the success rate of most small businesses are 98% of small businesses fail because they can't accept that they should be an entrepreneur first. If you can't make another business successful.
So you're saying people who try to go from 0 to 100 are nine times out of 10 not going to make it.
Where are you going to learn?
Yeah.
So, But people, if you don't spend time learning from a mentor, how are you going to learn how to run your business in an effective way? Either by looking at who you work for and saw what they should have done, or what they could have done, or what they did do.
So what's the best advice you can give for someone who wants to find a mentor? Like, what's the best person to look for?
In a job or a person?
Either one.
So a solid mentor in today's world, of course, I'm always going to look at your parent. You know, a family member.
And what if someone can't look up to their parents?
Then...
Because that's something that I see often. Like, people don't have very good relationships with their parents. So what's the best advice you would give for someone, like, let's say my age, who ran off, went to college because they didn't like their parents, they didn't like their home situation, which is quite common with people my age, and wanted to get out? Who should they look up to? Should they listen to podcasts like this? Should they look on YouTube? And even then it's difficult because you don't have that person right there with you. You just are listening to someone.
I don't think that finding somebody, I think that you're going to want to talk to somebody so bad and that you're only going to talk to people that agree with everything that you say, which is going to bring bad relationships into your life.
And what's the best way to recognize that you are bringing people in your life that you're just going along with everything and not actually wanting to make a change?
You're sad. You're sad. I think that you're just sad, and you feel it inside of your heart how sad you are. Nothing fulfills you. No amount of money. This is for dads. This is for everybody. This is not for a 19-year-old. You're constantly sad. You're constantly reaching for that next high. You're constantly, you know, and this is why a lot of people cannot, we talk a lot, you and I talk a lot about accepting people for who they are.
Yes. Which is something I had a lot of difficulties with.
Yeah, accepting people for who they are means you can't change people.
Yeah.
If everybody is going, you know, that's why in the financial world, accepting where you are is the first step. And then finding a solution to said problem.
I'd say realization and then exception, because you have to realize that there's a problem before you can accept it.
Yes. And that is ego and pride. Ego and pride. And I think that finding mentors, and there are a lot of groups. So the group that I joined, which was Superhuman Fathers, I was a part of that group for 2 years before I decided to change my life. And I will say this. When I decided to change my life was in August of, it was changing, but I'm talking about when I did a hard stop.
Yes.
And so here's what I did. I went there. I said a few things to the guys that were there. I went to California.
Okay.
I flew to San Diego for a 3-day men's group retreat. Mm-hmm. And I sat around a fire and I admitted some mistakes, and everybody looked at me like, man, we've all done that. You need to go look in the mirror and you need to say, hey, dude, you fucked up. And you need to hard stop. And ever since that, I had a peace come over me where it was like, I accepted that I had made the mistakes. I stopped penalizing myself. And I moved forward because, you know, as a 19-year-old, you're not emotionally able yet to understand that you can hard stop.
Yes.
You can hard stop. You can decide, hey, enough is enough. The line
I believe
is there.
at 19 you can.
You don't believe?
No, I do believe. I believe at any point you can, because once you realize that things are hurting you and you decide to stop, that's when you decide to stop.
Well, I don't think a person can hard stop because they hurt other people. I think you acknowledge that you're hurting other people, but when you say that you're hurting yourself and you're tired, that goes back to putting yourself number one. Because you can hurt people all day long and then just push them out of your life. Yeah. Why, if not, why would people get divorced? You know, why would people break up?
Lose friendships.
It's hard stops. Yeah. And so, but I think that in the financial world, especially for men, is facing the mirror, but you got to stop. You have to face the facts of what you have done. And then, because I don't think anybody is immune to mistakes. Nobody's got it figured out.
We're humans.
Yes. Nobody's got, even the people that I am great friends with, who I feel like have held the line, had other things happen. So they may have succeeded financially, but they failed in other places. And so with mistakes. And I think that if you look in the mirror, but you have to stop the mistakes.
Yeah.
Or at least, there are no no's, but you have to limit the mistakes that you make so you don't have to keep forgiving yourself. It's a lie. It's a lie. And you have to accept that people make mistakes. And it's no different. It's in the financial world too. Everything plays. Everything is a circle. There's nothing out of the circle. Everything plays into the
Because you can't do this if you're not treating yourself right and treating others right.
That's right. Because you'll see no value in, you'll think that everything is unattainable, that you can't do it. And everything is attainable.
When you tell yourself you can do it.
Well, that's a cliche. In my world, that's a cliche thing. Everything is attainable that you are willing to put effort in to get.
I agree.
Everything is attainable.
But I also believe if you don't have the confidence in yourself and you don't believe that you can do it, then you never will.
And where does confidence come from?
The things that you do for yourself every day.
And failure.
Yes.
You have to fail.
Yes. You have to learn from your mistakes.
That's right. Good job. So we only got into the first couple of things of the basically the 5 steps or 5 items for financial success. Next episode, we'll get into the rest of the 1 through 5. This was more of like an intro to JC and I and why we're doing this and why we feel like it's so important as a family to do it, as a father-daughter. And
make sure you like the video and listen to the next one.
Yeah, make sure you like or make a comment. If you have any questions or anything, just put it in the comments, and we will talk to you next time.
Thank y'all. Bye.